Welcome to Building Your Best Brain podcast. I'm so happy to have you guys back. If you are repeated listeners, if you're new, welcome. This is a great episode to jump into because this month of February 2026, whenever you're listening to this, this is when we're recording it. We're talking all about fear and the brain. Last episode, we dove into some nitty-gritty details around the neuroscience behind fear and how it plays into your attention. So I definitely encourage you to listen to that one. You don't have to listen to it before listening to this one, but there's definitely an element that we are building on every week. So I'll put that in the show notes. But today I want to talk about all the sneaky ways that you probably haven't thought of or not aware of that your fears are being activated. And this is to help us bring awareness to what we're not aware of, because that is the only way that we're able to change at the level of our behaviors, at the level of our thoughts, our beliefs, and at the level of our neural circuitry. So before I get into the sneaky ways that your fears are being activated probably daily, is to kind of do a little quick definition of what a fear is and talk a little bit about brain circuitry, which is going to be, if you're a repeated listener, this is going to be repeat information for you, but good news, good news, because awareness and education is empowering. The more stimulation you get, the more you're able to learn, the more you're able to integrate, and the stronger those circuits are. So if it's repeat, that is wonderful. If it's not, we'll get it repeating. Don't you worry. So essentially, fears, and under the umbrella of fears, I would put things like insecurity, I would put things like worry, um, I'd put things like essentially all of it goes under the bucket of it being threatening to you in some way. This is because fear needs to be threatening at the level of your nervous system, because then it's going to send signals to your body. And we talk a lot about this in the previous episode, so I won't get into the different structures here, but it's all in there. It's essentially that the idea, or even not the idea, but the idea, the thought, the reality, the conception, again, it doesn't have to be real in the flesh, is threatening to your survival. And of course, survival looks different now, but at the level of your brain, things that threaten your identity, things that threaten your perception of yourself, things that threaten what's important to you, things that threaten your beliefs, right? There's a lot of things that can be perceived as threatening that feel like a life or death situation, even though they aren't. And this is where understanding your fears or simply being aware of them is really important. And when you are talking about awareness, I'm not talking about being able to write down your fears or insecurities and worries. Yes, that is important and that is an element, but it is being aware of when they are going off in your brain. And if you're thinking, well, how can I not be aware of when things are going off in my brain? We talk a lot about that in the other episode, but I'm going to refresh here by talking about how circuits are wired. One of the ways in which they are wired, which I swear, every single episode, cells that fire together, wire together. The idea that in a circuit, which is several neurons that can be either within the same brain region or spanned across different brain regions, you need at least three to form a circuit, kind of have an input, a middle, which we usually call an interneuron that kind of connects the two, and then an output, which would be, a thought, a behavior, an action of some sort. When these fire at a high frequency stimulation. So when you stimulate them many times, especially many times in a row, at a high frequency, right, which can be a little hard to define, especially in the context of real life, your brain will say, okay, clearly we're using this circuit a lot. If we're using this circuit a lot, I don't want to spend the same amount of energy for it to complete its firing, for it to complete its cycle. So I'm going to add new proteins. I'm going to change the structures of the neurons. I'm going to release more or less neurotransmitter so that that circuit can fire more easily because we're using it a lot, right? Our brain uses so much energy. It uses approximately 20% of our body's entire energy, even though it's only a few pounds, right? So think of it, if you're like a 150-pound person, 20% of your energy is going to like 2 pounds, your 2 pound brain. And so it's finding any way it can to be more efficient. And that's where our fears, right? Especially things that we find threatening, whether it's thoughts, beliefs, whatever it may be, worries, insecurities, if they've been around for a while, which they very likely have, right? They very likely were formed within childhood, adolescence, maybe early adulthood, and then stimulated several times in order for it to be a consistent thought or a consistent fear, a consistent insecurity you have. Then it is designed to be able to fire easily. And this is where we get more into it in the other episode, but this is where you can have a lot of fears and insecurities that are not conscious. You are not aware of. The firing is happening even though you're not aware of it. And this is why this episode is coming to fruition, because there are sneaky ways that it's happening that you may not be aware of. And bringing some additional awareness to it will help uncover what it is, how prevalent it is. And with these things, then we can start making some meaningful change. So let's dive into the sneaky ways that our fear is presenting. And so I'm not going to go over the obvious ones. The obvious ones being, confronting your fears directly. So let's say you have a fear about losing a job and then you lose that job and you're under that stress, right? Because you're in a situation that you deem as threatening. Obviously, your fear is showing up and it's doing its thing in your brain. It's being stimulated. Another obvious one is relationships, right? So a friendship, yes, depending on how close you are with your friend. Romantic partnership, whether that's boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife, for sure. Threatening, for sure. If you're in an argument, if the relationship feels at risk or your partner brings up things within yourself, right? Relationships have a very beautiful way of mirroring some of our deepest insecurities and fears, and they just get to play out that way. So that's another way that's obvious. And the last way that is obvious, where like I don't have to convince you guys or you're not going to be surprised, is of course through family. And that is partially because of the closeness of the relationship we have with our parents or our siblings, with the idea of how we grew up together. You share DNA, they pass down certain beliefs, and there may be traumatic events associated with these people. So it's very easy to see how once you get into a room with them and you start conversing with them, that those insecurities and fears get exposed through those conversations or interactions. So if you're like, I can't think of any others, good. Stick around. You're not going to be disappointed with this list. The first one I want to go into is compliments. Now you're thinking, okay, but compliments are the opposite of fears, worries, insecurities, right? You have somebody reflecting back to you that, you're doing a good job, you're good at what you do, you have gifts, you know what I mean? And it depends on how you respond to the compliment. And this is where it gets sneaky. So if when you get a compliment, there is a small part of you that, well, for the most part, when you get a compliment, you feel neutral. And there's a small part of you that feels like, I know why I got that compliment, or I can see why that person would say that about me. How lovely, right? So you can still enjoy the compliment. It's not like you feel nothing, but it's more of a sense of recognition, which is the idea that you recognize that within yourself first. Now, if you don't feel those things with the compliment, then you're likely activating fear circuits that you're not aware of. And this can happen in two ways. One is if you put that compliment on a pedestal, you go, wow, I wasn't expecting that. This is incredible. That means that I'm doing amazing. Like nothing can touch me. And that's because that can put pressure and urgency on yourself. And this pressure and urgency is because there's something that's inherently threatening, right? So this idea that, oh, this compliment means so much, and it puts you into this kind of hope state. And the issue with putting pressure and urgency on yourself is that it is a signal to your brain that things are not okay as they are. And so there's likely an underlying fear associated with that elation or hyper contentment of that compliment. The other angle is if you, sorry, I'm like half laughing, half coughing. If you think the compliment is bullshit, if you receive the compliment and you feel uncomfortable because you don't believe the compliment is true or you don't see where that person can pull it from, it makes you feel awkward. You have no idea what to respond. You're trying to find a compliment for them and it makes you feel awkward because your brain is all like in scrambles. Is activating a fear. Your brain is essentially detecting bullshit. I like to call it a bullshit detector, but you can't write that in an academic article. So let's say it's detecting incongruencies or inconsistencies, pinging things as not true, and then activating that fear of whatever it is contradicting. And this is where I'll put it in the show notes. I have another episode on affirmations. This is also where affirmations don't necessarily work because of this incongruency, because of this inconsistency in what you're writing down and saying versus what your strongest circuit is doing. And this is activating it. This is causing that entire loop to continue. So compliments is one area to look at how you're responding to them, how they feel in your body, and what are the thought processes that happen when you get a compliment. Are there fears being activated in a sneaky way there? The second one is when things don't go your way, when things don't go according to plan. So you are planning your life, you're planning your day, and this can be in big and small ways, right? Big way would be, I'm really leaning into papers today, like academic journals. Let's say you're a grad student, you work super hard on your project, as all grad students do, and you submit to a journal. And the way that it works is that the editor will look at it first and decide whether it'll be continued to review, or they'll stop it there and say that it's not a good fit for the journal. And once it hits the review, which is usually 2 to 3 professors, it'll either come back with what we call revisions, which are requests on the writing, requests on more experiments to make the paper stronger to resubmit. Or sometimes in that stage, they'll say, actually, we would be requesting too much work for you to do. We're going to reject the paper here and you can resubmit. Let's say you submit it, the editor says it's a good fit, it goes to review, and you're already starting to plan your life expecting revisions to come back and it go positive. And let's say the reviewers review it and they're like, actually, we're going to reject at this step. That is one kind of big way that things are not going your way. You crafted a little path in your brain, or maybe you even put it in your calendar, you started rearranging your life, and boom, it doesn't work out as expected. A small way would be that you have your morning routine. You wake up, you do your meditations, you feed your cat first. I wonder whose morning routine this is. You feed your cat first, and you go to your favorite coffee shop on your way to work. The coffee shop, for whatever reason, usually only has 3 people in line. It has 15 people in line. In both those scenarios, there's something that has broken up your routine, something unexpected, something that hasn't gone your way. What is popping up for you? What's popping up in your body? What is the reaction that's happening? Likely, if you're feeling discomfort, if you're feeling irritable, if you're feeling agitated, if you're upset, if you're sad, it's likely that a fear is being stimulated. It's likely that a fear is being brought up, even at the smaller routine level, which people don't realize. And when you're waiting in line at a coffee shop and you're feeling irritable because you're going to be late, and even if you're not going to be late, you're just going to be later than you and your internal clock expected, and that's pissing you off. There is something there. There's an underlying fear circuit, insecurity, or worry that is being stimulated in that moment. Another, and we have 5 in total, guys, so buckle up. Another way that your fear could be stimulated or activated in a way that is sneaky is when you see someone, real life or online, that has what you want. Now, this could be so many things. This could be physical in terms of somebody looking beautiful or looking fit, and you desire to look more that way. Could be financial, right? Somebody is crushing it in business and they're showing up on a yacht and having a good time. This could even be in family relation area of life, right? This idea of maybe somebody's getting proposed to, somebody's getting pregnant, somebody has an adorable family photo shoot for you to see. With the things that you want, when you see that, how does that present itself in your body? And what kind of thoughts or reactions do you have upon seeing that? Because there is a different way to interpret that in your brain in a way that helps you build what it is that you want versus hurt, or basically versus strengthening things that are threatening and fearful and not helpful to get to where you want to be. You can train yourself, and this is a bit of a side tangent, to see those things and remind yourself that it's possible, and remind yourself that you're taking steps towards it, and remind yourself that if it's possible for other people, it's possible for me too. And if you, in this moment, heard me say that and say, not for me, that's not true for me, then this is seeing these things as likely activating those fear threatening insecure, worrying circuits in your brain because you're looking at those things and comparing and thinking that you don't have those things and that there's a reason you don't have those things. And then those fear circuits become more activated. So far we have compliments, when things don't go your way, seeing somebody having the things that you want. Another one that's really interesting, especially when it comes to social media, this really is more prevalent in a way that I don't think has ever been before, is when you meet someone or read online or have a conversation with someone and somebody has an opposing view to you, potentially has a view, or maybe it's even in conversation, is disagreeing with what you're saying. Your truth, your understanding in their eyes, the way they're explaining it is wrong. What comes up in your body? What thoughts come up? What reactions come up? Do you feel the need to defend? Do you feel like you're doing something wrong? Do you feel like you have to fight? Do you feel like because of that interaction or because of what you saw, you can't share what it is you want to share anymore? This really comes down to another little side tangent, which is being rooted to what you say, being rooted to what you know, also being rooted to what you don't know, and being okay with people not agreeing with you, and being okay with people not valuing the information that you know that has helped you. And like, it's okay. This is what makes the world such an interesting place, is that we all have different experiences, we all have different backgrounds, different ways of seeing the world, different ways of expressing what it is that we learn and how we interpret it. And if we are feeling threatened by somebody not agreeing with us, then there's a fear and insecurity there. For me, I love my mom, and I don't need to preface this, but I guess in case she's listening, hi, Mom. I love you. You're awesome. When I decided to do my PhD, some of you may know this, I was working in industry. So I did my bachelor's in neuroscience, master's in neuroscience, worked in biotech for over 2 years, and then went back to do my PhD. And it was a very tough decision. And I won't get into how I made that decision, but my mom didn't agree with me. She was going to support me either way, and support me as in she wasn't going to shun me from the family unit, whether I did this or not. I was still going to be invited to Thanksgiving dinner. I was going to still get a gift on Christmas. But she believed that what I wanted to do with my life, a PhD wasn't necessary. And a PhD would cut into my earning years. It would potentially put me behind. And it was a bit frivolous. It wasn't necessary. And this was difficult for me to process. But what it allowed me to confront was being rooted to my decisions, and being rooted to my decisions so much so I didn't need anybody else to agree with me. I'm towards the end of my PhD now, on track to finish in the summer. And I still feel just as rooted to that decision, just as happy as I made that decision. And I probably would regret not doing a PhD if I let that discomfort of someone not agreeing with that decision present itself. And even in conversations now, it's super interesting. I find it so not threatening when people are like, do you think a PhD is worth it or not worth it? And I'm able to present both sides on how, I believe it's worth it in these scenarios. And I've gained these skills and I've gained this and I've gained that. And I was like, but I also missed out on this and I don't get to have this. And there could be scenarios which it would be perceived as a waste of time. And it's okay. It is totally okay. And that's because I've addressed that baseline fear around it. So when people are disagreeing with you, whether it's in person, online, even just seeing a post where somebody shares a radical belief that's super different from yours, if it's bringing up something, there's something to look into there. And the last one I want to share with you guys, which we don't experience a lot of anymore because of social media, we're able to get so much stimulation all the time. It is when nothing is going on. When nothing is going on and everything is status quo and rolling as usual, maybe you have some time to sit and you don't have your phone and honestly, I encourage you guys to do this exercise. It's very humbling in a beautiful, beautiful brain way. You sit, you do nothing. What comes up? What at your baseline, when you take away all the distractions and all the noise, what comes up in your body? What thoughts show up in your brain? What compulsions do you have? Do you need to get up from that chair and do something? Do you physically feel uncomfortable sitting and doing nothing for 5 minutes, for 10 minutes? This in itself is showing what you may not be aware of is those fear circuits, those worries, those insecurities. This is why, and I wouldn't even categorize meditation in this category. It is similar. It's different because meditations and all the different styles really work on different brainwaves and they can have different focal points and different objectives. So it's similar in the sense that you're both sitting, which even in itself can bring up a lot of fear, worry, insecurity. A lot of people that I work with, when we do the brain training together, so my Fire and Rewire program, where we use at-home EEGs that you rent to meditate using your brainwave as a guide, which is super cool. Because everybody's been able to be really consistent with their meditations once they add this. And I believe it's because you're able to track your progress and see how your brain waves are changing. But for the people that I support that are not a part of the program or just starting their meditation journey, and they say, I can do meditative walks, I can have meditative moments when I'm doing the dishes. And they're like, but to find time to sit for even 5 minutes feels impossible. The block is usually that they don't see how it's supporting their most valuable area of life. That is true. And it's likely stimulating a fear that they have. One fear that I am constantly revisiting and working on in different levels in different ways is, am I doing enough? Insert blank. I'm a big actions person, which I'm sure you guys have picked up on. And one of my biggest blocks for meditation was that I was taking away from actions that I thought was ensuring my success. But once I've addressed that fear around not doing enough, the meditation practice became a lot easier. But that's really, even if you're not meditating with an EEG, there's still a focal point, there's still an action. When you're sitting and taking a break and doing nothing, that's where a lot of stuff can get uncovered quite quickly, especially if your circuits are strong and firing all the other times, but you're not able to see it in those other sneaky ways. This is a really great test to sit, put a timer on for, if you want to be spicy, a little more than 10 minutes, like 11 or 12, and see what comes up. And so, with all these sneaky ways, I present this to you because they are all potentially, and this is where the awareness piece would come in. And I would invite you to pick one, right? So either compliments, something not going your way, seeing someone have something you want, opposing views, or when you're taking a break and truly doing nothing, taking one of those a day, I would say, and kind of set the intention with your brain of, bring some awareness to me. When I come across this in my day, bring some awareness to me. Because it's all stimulation. So that circuit, whether you're aware of it or not, is getting stronger every time you stimulate it. And this where bringing awareness in those little areas can help you know when that circuit is being stimulated. Now, what to do with that awareness? Amazing question. I'm so glad you're here. I'm so glad you've arrived to it. If you go to the episode before, which I'll put in the show notes, which is around fear hijacking your attention, there is a table that you can do at the end of your day, every day for 10 to 15 minutes, where you unpack those moments. So you pick 2, 3, 4 kind of like thoughts, behaviors, reactions. So let's say you put one of them as, somebody gave me a compliment. And then you continue to fill out the table to figure out what the underlying thought is or behavior, what core wound is it stimulating, where did it come from, how did it maybe serve you in the past, right? Because the idea with these fear circuits, I like to call them core circuits, core stress circuits, is they're designed to protect you. Left unchecked, left stimulating all the time in these sneaky ways, it can really tip your body and your brain out of balance because then it's constantly protecting you and you're never doing the opposite, right? I mean, never say never, but you're doing the opposite a lot less. And what's the opposite of protection? Would be relaxation, being, enjoying yourself, allowing yourself to be vulnerable in a way, right? Like if we think of an animal that's eating and relaxing and bellies up, like my cat is right now. I wish I can't shift it, but she is belly up, relaxed, not in a threatening state, right? Doesn't need to protect herself. She can unwind and allow her body to do the reparative, restorative things to keep everything in balance. When we're in that constant protection mode, especially when we're not aware of it, then we're constantly stimulating our stress response and our body's ability to shuttle nutrients, our body's ability to express certain proteins really shift in one direction. And over time, that can be maladaptive. So this is one way to bring awareness to this circuit in ways you maybe were not aware of before. So if you made it all the way here, look into those sneaky ways once a day. I invite you to use the table that's in the previous episode, and I'll link the previous episode in the show notes. That table's in the show notes. And if you listen to this and you're thinking, shit, everything that Sylvie said, all the sneaky ways, I already know that the majority of them, if not all of them, are stimulating that fear circuit. And that sucks. How could I have let that happen? And you're starting that beating yourself up train. This is really good news. This is really, really, really good news. You don't need to beat yourself up. Celebrate the fact that you're here. Celebrate the fact that you've completed this episode, that you resonated with some of these areas because they will no longer go unnoticed. And so many people, partially because they don't want to look at it, partially because they just simply haven't come across this information, partially because of so many variables, have no idea what their fears and insecurities are, and have no idea that they're being activated all the time and causing so many problems in their life. And while it may feel easy to be critical of yourself as you're uncovering these things, I completely understand. My invitation for you is to celebrate and lean into it, recognizing that you have a lot more power than you think and that this information is empowering. And so if you have questions, don't be shy to drop them in the comments below. Don't be shy to reach out at me on Instagram at synapticsylvie. I'm happy to point any resources your direction. I'm happy to answer questions. I'm happy to begin to integrate this more easily into your life. It is really the application. Listening to this, taking the information is incredible. Again, you're doing more than the majority of the population by doing that. Taking a small action really distinguishes you from the rest. And that's where incredible brain progress happens. And so, if I can in any small way help you from the listening information, jumping to the application, by all means, bring me in. I'm ready, coach. Bring me in. Bring me in. I would love, love, love to support you because you really do got this. And this is a step that may feel the most overwhelming, but once it becomes a part of your routine, once you're able to tackle some of your biggest circuits, it just gets easier and easier. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. We're going to continue on the theme of fear and your brain. So if you have any questions about that as well, feel free to drop it in the show notes. And I look forward to seeing you next week. Bye. Enjoy the rest of your day.